Hello, and welcome back to my podcast, Life with Jode, where we talk about anything and everything. It has been a while since I sat in front of the camera and spoke. I have had a lot going off, so that is what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about all the issues that I've had to overcome over the past half a year, even longer than that if I'm honest. It was before Christmas. We are going to take a dive into boundaries, family dynamics, alcoholism, being an alcoholic, mental health. I am going to talk briefly over kind of like my issues alongside alcohol, but I'm not going to go too deep into it because I do want to make a separate episode based solely on my experience of alcohol and transfer addiction. I'm going to give you like a little bit of a rundown of life and kind of like what's happened in life for me to be so quiet on my podcast, and then I'm going to kind of like get back into the routine of things, get back into the swing of things, and enjoy doing what I'm doing. So let's get started. I do want to make a slight disclaimer before I get started. I want to just make everyone aware, whoever's listening, I am going to share certain stories that have happened over the past couple of months. I am not going to be naming any names. I am not doing it to start an argument. I am not doing it to kind of like rehatch old wounds. I am just going over what has led to me not doing my podcast and also to me suffering with the mental health struggles that I have been over the past couple of months. It is not a get at, it is not anything like that. If you do have an issue with whatever I've said, please drop me a message. We can have a civilised chat about it. But as soon as it starts to turn into an argument, I will be leaving the chat. Also, there is brief topics of extremely low moods and alcoholism, being an alcoholic, all that. So if that is something that's going to trigger you, please hopefully you might be able to gain something out of this if you do want to listen and watch. But if it is something that's going to proper trigger you and you don't want to be listening to it, by all means, click out of this. I hope you get the support you need. So let's get started. So I'm going to take you all the way back to August 24. August 24, I feel like is where my life started to go downhill a little bit. I left my job at an estate agent's, which I did truly like the job. I enjoyed the workload. People are going to be like, what the hell are you on about? I loved being stressed over work. As I say to Kyle and other people, if I am not stressed, I am depressed. If I have nothing to worry about, I'm going to create something to worry about. I don't know, obviously that's not very healthy, but that is my mindset. And I would much rather be stressed with my workload than stressed with X, Y, and Z, if that makes sense. So I ended up leaving that job. A couple of personal reasons, but one of the main factors was the commute to work. It was smack bang in the middle of Sheffield. At this point, I had moved to Rotherham. I was hitting the traffic in Rotherham, hitting the traffic on the bypass, and then hitting all the traffic on Ecclesall Road. So if anyone knows where I'm talking about, you'll completely understand what the hell I'm on about. So that was probably one of the main reasons. I was spending like an hour and a half in the morning commuting to work. I was spending another hour commuting away from home, coming to home, and it just wasn't a great work-life balance. And there was other factors involved, but that was obviously one of the main reasons. So I left that job and I went to a recruitment agency not far from where I live. And I thought it's very similar in job aspects. Like, I've been renting houses, apartments, whatever, to people that need them. I am now going to be looking for jobs for people that need them. My mentality was it goes hand in hand. It will be very easy for me to transition over to. So I took the leap and I joined I joined that recruitment team. Within a month, I don't really know exactly what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it. I believe it was the atmosphere in the office. I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't want to completely slate them. I'm going to say 90% of the staff there were lovely. There were that 10% that just made it very uncomfortable for me. That upon other things that I'm not going to go into because I really don't want to slate them at all. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't working out. So I pushed for another job. I then fell onto Morrison's. I thought at this point, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I thought I wanted to be back with the general public. I thought I wanted to be interacting with people day in, day out and not sit behind a computer screen, not sit down for 6 hours a day type of thing. So I think I joined Morrison's at the end of October, I think. So I started there. I started purely on replenishments and it was the early morning shift. So I was there, I was at work for 5, I finished no later than lunchtime. Normally I'd finish at 10, maybe lunchtime, maybe just a bit after because we might be busy. Because obviously October, November, December, Christmas period, people are shopping, people are over shopping, people are coming several times a week. And I really enjoyed the job. I enjoyed the fact that I was able to be in my own little world and satisfy my OCD needs because stacking shelves was really therapeutic for me, if I'm honest. But there were the issues of people that had done it before, if I had the day off, weren't doing the job properly. They weren't stock rotating, they weren't doing this, they weren't doing that, which would then lead me to get annoyed because I was then doing my job and it was taking me 10 times longer because I was fixing someone else's mess. But anyway, I then utilised, this is where it's going to start going deep into alcohol and stuff like that. So obviously when you work for a company like Morrison's, you get employee discounts, which off a weekly shop, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. Couldn't fault it at all. My issue was then, I was finishing work at 10. I was, for some reason, slowly moving into a depressive state. And I would go to the alcohol aisle, pick up a couple of bottles of wine, if it was 2 for 11 or 6 for 25% off or whatever it was. I would then go home and I would drink a bottle at least a day because whatever I was feeling, I couldn't eat it because of obviously my bypass, which obviously that's a trigger in a state that I needed to get out of and I didn't realise. So I transfer addiction, whatever the English language you want to use, over to alcohol instead of food. So I would be drinking around a bottle of wine a day at least from, I'm going to say, mid-November all the way until February of this year, end of February this year. So throughout that whole period of me consecutively drinking alcohol every single day, I noticed a complete and utter change in my mood, in my personality, and I hold my hands up, I wasn't the best partner in the world. I don't know how Kyle put up with me, if I'm completely honest. I don't think he realised how bad it was, in a sense. And I didn't want to admit how bad it was neither. I thought I had it under control. And obviously, when people are in that situation, of course they're going to think they have everything under control. And unfortunately, they really don't. I noticed my mood was very short and sharp and could be a little bit, I wouldn't say aggressive. I don't want to use that word. I don't believe I was very aggressive. I feel like I was more forceful. People might have different thoughts and opinions of that, but I would like to believe that I was being forceful, not aggressive. But I was very short and sharp and basically didn't want to stand for any shit. Bit of a background about me. So I have always been a people pleaser. I have always broken my back to fit someone else's narrative in life. I have always changed my persona, changed my personality, changed my likes and dislikes to fit someone else's needs before thinking about mine. And I feel like during this stage, it opened my eyes a little bit to how much people were walking all over me, basically. And even though I don't promote drinking every single day and becoming an alcoholic, I do like the fact that it has opened my eyes a little bit to hopefully stop me changing the person that I am, changing my personality, changing my desires and wants and stuff like that to fit someone else, to make them happier in life. Like, we've got one life and I want to live my life to my fullest. And that's probably going to sound extremely self-centered maybe, but I don't particularly care. I have, for the past 26 years, I have bent over backwards for people. It's now time for me to start putting myself first. But with saying that, I do need to find the right ways to go about it. And some of the ways that I went about it while I was under the influence of alcohol probably wasn't the nicest ways to go. So throughout Christmas, obviously, Christmas is very family orientated. I don't really see much of my family. I have my mum, my granddad that are very close by, well, rather close by, my foster brother, but he's very autistic, so he doesn't, when he's in person, he never speaks to you. And then the rest of my family are just scattered over the UK, and we don't particularly see each other unless it's a special occasion. Then Kyle has quite a lot of family. He has his brothers, half-step siblings, and then his grandma and granddad and everything like that. So we did try our hardest to equally spend as much time as possible with everyone without causing uproar, maybe. So my family has traditions. We have 2 traditions. We go holly picking on the last Sunday before Christmas. That has been a tradition since I was a baby in arms, and I have only ever missed it once because of work. Other than that, I've been to every single one. And that is a tradition that I want to carry on going to while I can, and possibly even carry it on down the line. Then our relatively new tradition is going to Chatsworth House on New Year's Eve and walking around the house because they've got all Christmassy stuff. Anyway, going off topic. And then Kyle and his family have their traditions, which is completely fine, but we've got to find a border in the middle of kind of like, not to sound selfish, but what fits us. Obviously, we have to think about others, but we've got to think about ourselves at the same time. And at that point, for anyone that works in retail, Christmas period is hard. In any job aspect that is customer facing, retail facing, Christmas is busy. And you have to work one or the other. You have to work like Christmas or New Year's, or if you don't work Christmas Eve, you've got to work Boxing Day. It depends on how everything falls, but your time is limited with what you can request off. And if someone else has requested it, well, that's tough boo-boo for you when you've got to put up with it and you've got to do the shift. So there was a lot of give and take. And I was trying so hard to fit everything that me and Kyle wanted to do, then fit everything that Kyle's family wanted to do and my family wanted to do. And I was to the point of an absolute mess. Like, I was prioritising other people's opinions and needs and wants over sleep, basically, at one point, because fair enough, I was doing the replenishment shifts, starting at 5, finish at like 10, 12. I've got the rest of the day to myself, which is fine. But in great aspects, when people look into it further, I'm going to bed at like 7, 8 o'clock at night because I'm absolutely conked out. I am horrible when I have no sleep. So sleep is a priority for me. And it is what it is. Everyone needs to sleep. Point. That's it. Anyway, so there was some rocky terrain with things over Christmas and New Year. I feel like people see what they want to see and not see what they want to see and hear what they want to hear and not actually look any further into it. My mum is a very big picture taker. She hates it, well, I say this, she hates a picture being taken, but she likes the idea of photo memories. That is the exact same thing as, well, And I actually now enjoy taking my picture, but I enjoy the picture memories. I enjoy being able to look back in a year or two's time and go, oh my God, that's what we did that year. That's what we did that year. That's who was there. So my mum's gotten into the habit where, especially if we are all as a family, she wants a photo. And if you don't want to be in the photo, tough, you've got to be in the photo. If you're present, you're in that photo. And then my mum tends to post it on Facebook because that's where my granddad can see it, and Facebook memories are a thing that she loves. So there's that. And then there's some people that don't like photos being taken, which is completely standard, fair enough, that's fine. But things get misconstrued, and if things get posted later on down the line in a timeline that doesn't match up, things get made into something that it's not, and that's where some issues lied. I probably didn't handle some of the situations very well, but like I said, I was under the influence of alcohol quite a lot during that period, so my temper was my putting up with people's shit was just not for me. I was tired, I was depressed, I was an alcoholic, and at some point I was very abrupt to people because I was bending over backwards for them, and they couldn't see that, they didn't appreciate that, and at one point I had to turn and say, I'm sorry, I'm working, I'm going to get there when I get there. And that's that. Like, people have got to work for a living. People have got to earn money to be able to live a life. Like, end of the day, that is life. And if I have to work, then I have to work. So that's kind of like the mentality that I was in at that point. I was like, well, I'm sorry. If I've said I can do this time, then times and shit get changed, and then like I bend over backwards to change my hours, and then it all gets changed again. Tough. I've done what I needed to do to prove that I wanted to be a part of this situation. I've done what I can do, and that's it. Like, there's nothing else I can do. There's nothing else that I can do to now kind of like fit in, if that makes sense. Which then made things a bit awkward after Christmas, in the New Year time. A lot of things that had been said got taken out of context with a lot of people, family, friends, acquaintances, and stuff like that. Over Christmas, I got really ill, from what I remember. I had a couple of days where I was in hospital. I thought I had a gallbladder attack. It turns out I had an infection. And then also something to do with some of the deli meats that I'd been eating also wasn't helping. So I was being sick, I was in pain, I was in A&E for 12 hours overnight. So I was dealing with like my own shit as well. But I don't like to make a fuss out of things, so I wanted to try and kind of like keep it on the down low a little bit and not tell family or friends, because I just thought, I don't want a fuss. It's pointless. No one can help. So what's the point in telling people? January, February time. Again, one thing that really annoys me is there's certain celebrations that come around yearly, and it's not hard to remember them celebrations. But some people have the tendency to leave it extremely last minute and then be like, are you coming? Some people can do that. Some people have the luxury of, well, at the time, I'm gonna say at the time, because obviously my job role's completely changed. At the time, people have the luxury of the weekend. At that point in time, I didn't have the luxury of the weekend. I was working every single weekend, and it was extremely hard for me to get them like a weekend off, or even just like a Saturday morning off. It was ridiculous. It was a strain. So I just felt a little bit irritated and a little bit annoyed how some plans get dropped on you at the drop of a hat, like that night or the day before. And I'm just like, well, because I'll then work out timings. I'll be like, oh, well, it's going to be like 2 hours as a whole to eat, drink, blah, blah, blah. Then it's time to get home, then it's time to get undressed, it's time to get ready for bed, it's time to wind down, and sometimes it's hard for me to wind down. So I was just there like, right, okay. And then I'm thinking, well, I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get ready and be at work for 5. And then it was one of them, it was like, I don't want to say no, because I don't want to seem like I'm ungrateful and I don't care about that person and all that jazz, but also I've got my own health to think about at the same time, and it's just having them boundaries in just life in general, to know how and where and when to bring things up and just be like, look, listen, this is this situation, blah, 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 blah. Then at the end of February, I went down to somewhere down south for a content day, and on my way back, I was sat down and I was in pain. So TMI for you all, if you're a boy, you may not want to listen to this. If you're a girl, it might be helpful. I had a huge lump on the outside of my foof, and I could feel it throbbing, and I could feel it. It's going to sound so weird, but I could feel it getting bigger. And basically that day I had been wearing a tampon all day because I was obviously time of the month, but I was doing a content day. I was wearing dresses. I didn't want to ruin anything. Obviously I didn't wear the same tampon throughout the day. I did change as you're meant to, but that then caused issues for me. On my drive home, I ended up taking it out, swapping and putting a pad on, which was a bit more comfortable, but at that point there was a lump, and that lump hurt. I think within 3 days the lump hadn't left. I then got extremely worried. Obviously, you say and hear and think lump, you think worst case scenario. I went to A&E because I've still not relocated doctors too closer to me, so that's fun. So I went straight to A&E, I explained the situation, they sent me straight up to gynecology. They turned and said, okay, that's fine, we're not going to let you sit in A&E for X amount of hours, we'll send you straight up to gynae. So I went straight up to gynae and sat in their waiting room. I was sat in that waiting room for 7 hours. 7 hours. I got there and I got my bloods taken, I got my temperature taken, I had something else done. So I thought, oh my gosh, like, this is quick. And then I sat down and they were like, oh, doctor will be with you shortly. And then people would come in and coming out, and they'd be there after it. They'd come in after me, but leave before me. And I was just there like, and it got to the point where I basically cried to a nurse because I was sat in weird positions. I'd not eaten all day. From that point, I don't think. I was in a horrendous amount of discomfort and a little bit of pain. After 7 hours, I finally got seen by a male doctor. And not to sound sexist, I feel like all doctors deserve their place, especially when they've trained. I 100% understand. But I feel like a male doctor doesn't potentially understand the amount of pain, discomfort, etc. that a woman would be under in a circumstance like this. So he, with a nurse being in the room at the same time, they checked me over, they felt the area, they kind of like roughly sized up what was going off, and they informed me that it was I can never say the word, a Bartholinian cyst or something. Basically, it's a buildup of fluid with a lubricant gland downstairs. So I was like, all right, okay. But he goes, I do feel warmth from an infected area as well, a little bit further up. So he gave me the lowest dose of antibiotics you could have. The lowest dose. He was like, oh, it should go in a couple of days, blah, 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 blah. 3 days, I felt like it had gotten worse, and I went straight back to gynecology. I said, this is the situation, this is what happened, I want someone to look at me now, I want to put something in place to hopefully help drain the cyst, because I have had something very similar before, but it felt completely different. So they were like, okay, right, take a seat in the waiting room. That time, I was in and out within 2 hours. Typical. They get me in the room with a female doctor and a nurse. They have more of a poke and a prod. They try and see if there's any budge in it, because a cyst is basically a little bit like a spot. So they were seeing if there's any budge in it, and it was more firmer from the infection than anything else. So they did try and do a catheter, cannula drain. I don't know, I can't remember the words. I really should have written them down before doing this. But yeah, so they tried to do, basically they leave a cannula, I want to say it's a cannula, in the cyst to help it drain, but it wouldn't work. It wouldn't stay there. So they said, right, we're going to up your antibiotics, because in the first place you shouldn't have been put on 250. You should have been put on at least 500. So they bumped up my antibiotics and extended it for a little bit longer to catch up with what my body had kind of like missed. And then at this time, we're like beginning of March, and me and Kyle had booked a very spare of the moment holiday to Turkey for a week, just because my birthday's in March. We flew the day after my birthday, and I was like, you know what, I want this holiday. I need this holiday. I need to just get out of this horrible feeling that I'm in, the horrible funk that I'm in. Hopefully a holiday might break me out of the horrible cycle. And I was just like, the doctors and nurses advised me to stay out of water, which is what I did until the very last 2 days. Obviously I was on antibiotics, so I didn't drink until the last 2 days, which is when my antibiotics had finished. There were some other little rules that the town said, we advise you not to do this. So I did a lot of that until my antibiotics had finished. Once they had finished, I was a bit like, sod it, last 2 days of holiday, let's enjoy myself, let's not worry. Sitting down, laying down, getting up just was uncomfortable. Sometimes walking was a bit uncomfortable. I took some really nice brand new jean shorts, uncomfortable because they obviously rid up a little bit and it was rubbing. I got back, and the following day, I think I went straight back to the gynecology ward and was like, this hasn't particularly got any better. Can you sort it out? So that morning I actually had only something to drink. I had not eaten that day. So I was like, I don't want to leave until this is sorted. I want it sorting. I was sat in gynecology again for another 12 hours. No word of a lie. It was probably about 12 hours, because they were hopefully going to get me in that day, I think they said. And then it kept getting pushed back. I understand more severe cases get put in front of patients like me. I get that. But it was just a bit annoying how I had not eaten all day for them to be like, oh yeah, you're definitely going to go in for surgery today. And then it never happened. I was starving. So I think my granddad came to see me actually. For a little bit, because he was in the area. And then I turned around and said, you can leave, like, I don't think anything's going to happen. Don't waste your day. Yeah, so I told him that he could leave, like, no point in wasting your day as well as mine. I should be in later, any news I'll tell you. Then they turned around and said, we want to admit you, but you're not going to get your surgery until tomorrow. And then at this point, I was hungry. And I was probably a little bit still having withdrawals for not having alcohol in such a long time, because I didn't stop drinking until I got put on antibiotics, and I stopped drinking. I thought, if I play by the rules, hopefully this thing sorts itself out itself. Hell to the no, that didn't happen. So as well as being extremely hungry, I was extremely thirsty, and I ended up getting put. I got admitted, but I was still sat in the waiting room until a bed freed up. And then they allowed me to have food, but it was too far gone from the normal tea time rounds. So they only offered me a sandwich, which was rubbish. I obviously, by being bypassed, I need high protein foods, less carbs, more fibres, blah, blah, blah. They gave me a ham sandwich with the lousiest slice of ham in it. Then I asked for a cheese sandwich so that I could put them together, so then it's a little bit more proteiny. That was rubbish. And then everything else, I don't particularly like. Yogurts sit really weird on my stomach. I asked for some biscuits and they went down all right, but it wasn't hitting the spot, and obviously it wasn't an ideal meal for me. So at this point, I had actually lost a lot of weight. I was hitting the 7.5 stone bracket, which wasn't good. Like, I looked like a ghost. I looked ill. I looked like a skeleton. You could see all my bones. Well, you could start to see my bones and stuff like that. Under eyes was black. Like, it was ridiculous. But it was all because of the different factors of the antibiotics were making me nauseous and this, that and the other, and not being able to eat. I didn't eat for a couple of days. properly eat for a couple of days because I was expecting something to happen, as in a surgery or whatnot. So I finally had the surgery the next morning. I think I was like the first or the second one in. And then I think I was discharged later on that night, but I had to keep pestering the nurses. I was there like, I've not had a doctor come round and give me like my post-op review type of thing of like, this is what we did, this went well, blah, 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 blah. And then this is your aftercare. I never got that. I never got my medication until just before I left. I had to literally pester them for it. So the whole experience in the hospital was a bit naff, if I'm honest. And then I come home and it was just so much better. I bought one of them donut rings to help me sit and relieve pressure off the area, and slowly but surely I was getting better. And within the surgery that they do to help remove the cyst, they mess around with your nerves a little bit. So I used to get like shocks of pain, like, yeah, a little bit shocks of pain type of thing. And I think it was your nerves connecting back together. So I'd be like sat and then I'd be like, okay, all right, that feels weird. I was off work for about 4 weeks after my surgery. And then I extended my leave because I was extremely anxious to go back to work for multiple reasons. At this point, I had realised that I really didn't enjoy my job. I didn't particularly enjoy the people. I felt extremely uncomfortable. I didn't feel like I was welcomed in by the group type of thing, you know what I mean? And then also I didn't really know how the dynamic of coming back to work was going to be. So I did actually ask my doctor to extend my leave based on the fact that I didn't feel comfortable downstairs, and also I was feeling extremely low moods. And the doctor willingly gave me my sick leave note and was like, here you go, you've got, I think they gave me another 2 weeks off. And then I went back to work and they had moved my department, which means my hours were completely different. Hours that I couldn't particularly do, neither did I want to do them, if that makes sense. I took the job on the basis of doing 5 till 10, 12s with the potential of maybe picking up an extra shift with out of them hours, if that makes sense. But that is obviously your choice. They then moved me to a different department that needed to have shifts early morning, smack bang in the middle of the day, late at night. And it wasn't feasible for what I wanted or what I wanted to do or how I wanted to do stuff. So I, at this point, started to really dread going to work. I hated it. I used to seem to get every single weekend smack bang in the middle of the day. Kyle don't work weekends. So I'd literally be seeing him for a couple of hours after work on a weekday, and then on the weekend, again, a couple of hours after my work. And I was just like, this is not what I wanted. The whole reason why I took that job in the first place was based on what I was signing up for in the first place. I then felt, again, extremely uncomfortable within the new team that I was working with. I just felt a bit out of place, I don't know. I don't really know how to explain it. So I ended up trying to find a new job. I pushed and pushed and pushed. I went for several job interviews. Some of them rejected me. Some of them offered me a job. And then it was a case of I had a couple of job offers and I had to think what was best for me and what I wanted to do and what I was going to fit into. At this point, I'd realised that I really wanted to go back into more of a corporate kind of like role, more of a sit behind a desk, but still got the chance to mingle with people, whether that be over a phone, through an email, face to face, blah, blah, blah. And event planning had been something that I had been looking to do as a college course or like a open college university thingamabobber, whatever you want to call them, but couldn't afford it. So I took the plunge to go for a job as a partnerships and event executive for a company based in Chesterfield. And you're all probably going to be like, why the hell have you just gone from Sheffield to Chesterfield? I'll explain in a minute. So basically, I thought on the basis of, if I was to get this job, I get on-the-job training, which is what I prefer. I'm much more of a visual physical learner than a sit down, read a textbook. And as long as I can like learn the basics and all that jazz, if I don't stay with them, I've got experience behind me, and that experience is always good. So I went in for my interview. It was a little bit overwhelming, if I'm honest, because I was just a bit like, oh my gosh. And there were like a literacy, like a reading and writing test that you had to do. And I was just a bit like, because I know for a fact my grammar is rubbish. Like, if it wasn't for predictive text and autocorrect and stuff like that, it would be horrible. It would be a mess. So I was just like, oh God. And then there was like matching numbers and making sure like cross-matching the data and stuff like that. And again, I thought there's like 10 things you need to spot, and I could only spot like 6 or 7. And I was just like, oh, I'm probably the worst that they've had. And then it got to the interview time where you speak and stuff like that. And I thought that was great. I thought that couldn't have gone any better. I felt like me and the interviewers connected. I felt like the conversation flowed and stuff like that. So I was a bit like, I was in two minds. I was a bit like, oh, that aspect of it went really well, but I feel like the other aspect was a bit rubbish. So I held out a little bit of hope, but not too much hope, in regards to hopefully getting the job. And I want to say a week or two later, so I got a job offer from a different place, and I held out to hear back from them, because they were who I wanted to go with. They were kind of like my first choice. So I kind of like held off a little bit before going back to the first job offer that I got offered. I think a week or two later, they got back in touch and they offered me the job. And I was ecstatic. I got off the phone with the lady and I cried. I was in floods of tears. I was so happy with joy. I was an absolute mess, not gonna lie to you. I thought, someone's taking a chance on me. Someone sees my potential. I'm getting out of a job that I don't like. I'm hopefully going to be going into a career that I'm going to excel at, and I can learn stuff not only for a future job if I was to not stay with them anymore, or if I was to stay with them, I can excel with them. Obviously, all fingers crossed that I get to stay. But it was just, I was a mess, and I went back to my partner and I was like, I've got offered the job, oh my gosh. So I ended up joining them as partnerships and events executive for a company called Destination Chesterfield, where we help promote and advertise Chesterfield as a place to invest, work, live and visit. I love Chesterfield. I went to Chesterfield College. So, like, this is where the background of why I chose the job. I went to Chesterfield College and I absolutely loved it. I lived on the kind of like outskirts of Sheffield that connect straight to Chesterfield. So a lot of my upbringing with my mum, instead of going to Sheffield City Centre or the opposite way where Meadowhall is, we'd just go to Chesterfield because it'd be quicker. Everything's a lot more close knit, everything's there, and it's just as good, and it's not as busy, if that makes sense. Like, my mum's not a fan of crowds, so it was very fitting. It's also hand in hand with the Peak District and Bakewell, Chatsworth, Matlock, all places like that, all places that I basically grew up in and with and at. My pops and my nan, we used to always go for walks. Every weekend when I was a child, we used to go for walks, and it used to always be in the Peak District, and it would be everywhere and anywhere. And I just love Derbyshire as a whole, and if I could, if we were to ever get a new house, I would really love to be either Chesterfield, Bolsover, or like Derbyshire based, just because you literally have like a town one end and a lovely walk on the other end. Like, they are literally so close knit, and it just, I love it. I love the idea of it, and I want to offer my future children the opportunities that I got. So yeah, it also works out extremely well because Kyle works in Chesterfield and we both start work at the same time, so we carpool. I only work 3 days a week, but them 3 days we carpool unless I have an event to go to, and we will travel separately, but that's very, very rare because normally my events are within my time of working. So yeah, it all just fits perfectly. It all fits hand in hand, and I'm enjoying my job and I'm enjoying my life, and things have gotten so much better. I have had to literally hit rock bottom to then come back up, and I'm so happy that I am where I am now. I'm happy that it's going to sound so controversial and weird, but I am happy that I've gone through what I've gone through for me to then realise what truly matters in life and what I need to do to keep myself on the straight and narrow. Since I want to say the end of March, and we are currently in August, so March, April, May, June, July, August, past 5 months, I have been sober, kind of. I have on special occasions had a glass of wine or a cocktail or something like that, but I have known my limits and I know when to stop, and the last time I drank alcohol, I regretted it. So it's now a thing of, I'm not touching it anymore. I don't need it. I don't want it. It makes me extremely low moods. It turns me into a person that I don't want to be. So I have completely scratched alcohol out of my life. Don't get me wrong, every now and then I'll be like, oh, I could really kill a glass of wine. But I feel a lot more better in myself when I don't. I am learning slowly how to navigate how I speak to people and what I want to say to people and the best ways to go about saying things. I do at the moment, if something winds me up, I will either walk away from the situation or I will sit there quietly and ponder on my thoughts before just blurting out what I think. That's more just to make sure that what I want to say is going to come across how it wants to come out. I have had a few friendships fall apart. I do feel like this is because people obviously just grow as people. Like, people veer off into their own little, what they want to do with their lives. And now I finally get to comprehend that. I understand it. And if people move on from that friendship, then that's life. And everyone has to deal with that and stuff like that. So that's completely understandable. But I've actually started to learn how to stick up for myself. Kyle was a bit shocked at one point at the way I stuck up for myself in a certain situation. Sometimes I'm one of them people that will let things, sit on things and not say anything, and it'll build up over time and then you just explode. And unfortunately, I did do that with someone who was being extremely horrible towards me. Someone who I thought was a friend who didn't treat me how I believe a friend should have treated someone. So that was an experience. I did try my hardest to explain to this person, this is why I feel this way, this is why I'm annoyed, this is what this is what that is. But then it all just got turned around on me and I'm the bad person and X, Y, and Z. So I just thought, you know what, I've said my piece, I've said what I wanted to say, I've explained why I'm annoyed with this situation for this situation, and if this is all we're going to come to, then that friendship can be done. So there has been a couple of friendships like that at the moment that have fizzled out, that have had the nice little talk of, I don't appreciate this, I don't particularly appreciate that, and then we see what happens, basically. I wish them all the luck in life. I hope they find what they want, they have what they want, they have the friendships that they require. I am not in the life of wanting to be put down by people that are meant to be uplifting and supporting me as a person. So that is the end of an era, in a sense. Currently now, I am plodding on with life at the minute a little bit. I'm extremely exhausted. I am concentrating on work when I'm at work, Tuesday while Thursdays. I am behind the scenes planning and organising some events, more bariatric related events at the moment, but hopefully next year I'm going to plan some events that are more just, fitting for more of a wider community. So that's exciting. And if you want to know what I've got planned, follow me on my socials, because some of them are already being advertised, others are just about to become advertised, so you can see what's going off. And yeah, that is kind of like the rundown. That is where I've been, that's been what's happened, understanding kind of like where I've been and all that jazz. So yeah, if you have a story, big or small, and you want to be featured on my podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. My email is lifewithjode@gmail.com, or you can message me on my socials, which is at Life With Jode Official. You can watch my podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also view this on YouTube, which is Life With Jode. And that's a wrap from me. I will see you guys on another episode of Life with Jode. Bye.